I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. We're going to do it a little different today, give you a little history, because a lot of people who are around the North Carolina, River Creek areas, South Carolina up to Virginia, a lot of us have a lot of Equatorial Guinea in us, a lot of Cameroonian, and I do know that it takes one step in researching, you guys, and the rest is up to you.
A period of learning for a black people. And right now, we've come to a moment where the truths are starting to come out. And the truth has its own spirit. I do not need to convince you. Pastor T doesn't need to convince you. The truth has its own spirit, and it comes to you through anybody.
Yeah, the truth hurts sometimes, but it's something we all need to hear. Growing up with the elders from Virginia, North Carolina, South, down to Georgia, even across to Tennessee, we've heard from the elders that we are the natives. We are the aboriginals, one of the tribes from here in the North Americas. But today, with all the new technology and science that we have, a lot of us have done our own digging and searching. And guess what? You guessed it. Nothing that grandma or great-grandmama said was proven to be true scientifically. So what does this mean? Where is the truth? What are the facts? Well, let me tell you, it's way more than just DNA. Now see, my grandmother had information on days and days. About how her grandfather came from the Cherokee this, and how they came from the Virginia Creeks. I know I have documents, and that's a real good point in ancestry, is allowing you to go through, look at your family documents, look at all the information, and actually verify and cross-references and check facts. And it's not just to denounce what our elders are telling us. It's really just to find out who we are more, and to connect the stories that we were told bits and pieces of. This cannot be your stopping point. Now, ancestry is for you to gather your DNA if you want to, but really, ancestry is for you to gather your tree, your documents, your files, your people, so that you can trace these documents and verify everything that's coming through. You hear me? So this right here is just a starting point. But what was very unfortunate and misfortunate is just that there was no claiming or no owning of the African heritage. None in my family. And this is the disconnect, I feel. And this is why, as a people in a lot of families, we have this disconnection and will continue to, because we have those elders who are not willing to grasp.
Every summer at Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the Cherokee Indians sponsor their Trail of Tears pageant, the story of how the U.S. government robbed the so-called 5 civilized tribes of their homelands in the South and moved them by force to Oklahoma. They don't tell about the thousands of blacks the tribes brought with them, their slaves.
My mammy and pappy belonged to a part Cherokee named W.P. Thompson when I was born.
The woman reading is my sister, Elaine Ford Staton, But the words are those of our great-grandmother, Phyllis Thompson Pettit, whose Georgia-born parents were brought by the Cherokees over the trail. I learned that beginning with the administration of George Washington, it was the policy of the U.S. government to civilize the Indians by teaching them modern farming techniques.
To adopt agricultural practices that patterned after the whites, and one of those in the South was slave trade.
I don't ever talk about it very much because I think it's a very shameful part of Cherokee history, and so I've purposely avoided involving myself in that whole issue.
They adopted Southern institutions, Southern dress, Southern black slavery.
But one characteristic they did not like was Southern greed for their land. By 1830, through wars and treaties, the 5 tribes had lost most of it. Then they were all ordered to move west to Oklahoma. 4 of the tribes left, but the Cherokees took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. At least they won the lawsuit. Then the man on the $20 bill stepped in.
Yeah, sound crazy, right? I know these to be facts. My grandmother actually gave us history on this. Now, see, a lot of these tribes were mixing up with each other. And yeah, although the Indian tribes had slaves, they were still doing the same Southern practices as the Confederacy, as they said. So therefore, they were mixing, they were treating, them the same type of way. Now, with the history I know that was growing up in my home was that my grandmother's father was from Cherokee. His father was a Cherokee, and their father's father was Cherokee. And to her knowledge as well, her grandmother's mother was the slave. Now, where does this fit in at? It's a mixing. It's a mixing of the people, or it is a people who have finally mixed and no longer want to be African or African descent. My people from Bioko Island. So I have the heritage of the people of Cameroon and Bioko Island. That means on my tree that I went up to the tippy top and cannot find any more of, that one lady, my one mother, resided and came from Bioko Island. I can definitely look at this in a couple of ways. That, of course, we know the Africans were already migrating to the Americas way long before the Europeans discovered the land.
They obscure the true beginnings of the story of how Africans were first to step on American soil. Contrary to popular belief, African American history did not start with slavery. An overwhelming body of new evidence is emerging, which proves that Africans had frequently sailed across the Atlantic to the Americas thousands of years before Columbus, and indeed before other civilizations. The strongest evidence of African presence in America before Columbus comes from an eyewitness account of Columbus himself. In 1920, a renowned historian and linguist, Leo Wiener of Harvard University, in his book Africa and the Discovery of America, explained how Columbus noted in his journal that Native Americans had confirmed that black-skinned people had come from the southeast in boats, trading in gold-tipped spears. Ever since Christopher Columbus first suggested that black Africans preceded him, a number of scholars investigated this contention. In his Journal of the Second Voyage, this was recorded in Racolta Part 1, Volume 1. Quote, "Curious about the validity of this story, Columbus did indeed send samples of these spears back on a mail ship to Spain to be examined, and it was found that the ratio of properties of gold, copper, and silver alloy were identical to the spears then being forged in West African Guinea."
So we have the migration process. So that could have came from there. And we could have already been here on the land as the black people with the Indians, being with them before the Confederate mentality, Southern mentality kicked in. You have a Bioko Island beautiful woman. I know my great-great-great-great-great-great-granny was bad. I know she was beautiful. So you have this beautiful Bioko Islander coming to the Americas, and you don't think she ain't gonna get bagged up by somebody? Oh, yes, she is, honey, because guess what? That's my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmama. And we just found out that my baby's father actually has Native American in him. So the cycle in history does not stop, and it keeps on repeating itself until we really get to the nitty-gritty of who we are. There is the mixing, and there starts the whole misconception. All black people ain't got no Indian in them, or we are not any type of native to the land, because that right there is a whole lie in itself.
So, well, this story seems to describe the trade wind-driven equatorial current, or the Canary Current. And you can see it's very easy for Africans from the south and the Angola regions to come up towards the equator and going westwards, or from the western coast of Africa north of the equator to go eastwards along that same current. Now, at least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, in 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, he said he met members of a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. And according to Balboa's log, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away, and he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. So there are also examples of physical evidence, including pre-Columbian African skeletons, which have been found throughout the Americas. Now, dating between 800 BCE and 300 CE, these murals are from the Temple of the Warriors at Chichen Itza. Now, they clearly feature the color version is easier to see, but they clearly feature three races. And it's depicting black and Indian allies and a battle against white invaders.
Okay, so what's intriguing to me, the people who actually came, most of the people that came from Central West Africa, where my people came from, they actually ended up in the Caribbeans. According to this map, the overview of the slave trade out of Africa, according to this map, my grandmother would have ended up either somewhere in the Jamaica, Saint Dominica, Cuba, in the Caribbean, somewhere there, or they would have ended up in Brazil. Now, this is according to the transatlantic slave trade. It don't add up. And the reason why I say it don't even add up is because if my people are from this part, then obviously they were not brung during this transatlantic slave trade. They had to have already been here as black Africans prior to the Europeans coming here. I'm just letting y'all know, like, do your research, find out what you are, where you came from, and and map that shit out with what's going on. Map it out with what is really going on and what's being fed to us in the system, and find out where yours came and where it come from. Like every time I look at someone new, I meet someone new, they always ask me, "You got some island in you?" And I've always been like, "Nah, I mean, off the island of North Carolina. Yeah, I used to sit on the shores all the time in North Carolina, off the beach shores. I grew up 25 minutes from the beach. You know, I used to sit there all the time, my whole life growing up, loving the ocean, not even knowing that that was really in me. Like, in me, my people came from a whole island. And this right here, it's just something that is so revolutionary. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like it opens up a whole nother door in your mind, in your eyes. Like, but I just want y'all to understand and know that we still have that DNA inside of us, and all we have to do is unlock it. We've been here before. We cannot allow the system to reprogram us to become a new century of slaves.
Hey, sister, go, sister, soul, sister, flow, sister.